And I wonder if you think that with China, we may be having to move from engagement, which has been practiced for 40 years and may now prove to be a failure, to one of containment, at least in the military level.
I think we have to look at this. The adventurism we're seeing in South China Sea and other places is something which, at this point, I don't see the U.S. as having a conscious policy to confront effectively what the Chinese are trying to do. And I don't mean, I use the word confront, that may sound a little more aggressive than I mean, but in a policy sense, to confront them. And we haven't done that. And partially this is because we have had fond hopes that because there are parts of the Chinese economy which are more market-oriented and places in China which have become very market-style oriented. You can't forget that there is a central government there, and that central government has in the past, at times, done some very, very restrictive things with their people and has been willing to hold the leash at critical times. And in the United States, we tend to think, gee, if they're getting a little better, they're getting a little better, it'll all turn out, it'll all be nice. Well, that may not be the case. As the previous speaker said, you may be facing a leadership now whose effect could be 10 years or more in a much more aggressive Chinese posture. We have to be willing to have a foreign policy which understands over generations what we want to do for the world, where we want to go, and what we want the world to look like. It's not to say the United States can control everything, because we can. But as the leading defender of freedom in the world, we have to be clear about where the boundaries are, what modalities are we working in, where will we allow things to happen, where will we say this is adverse to our interests and to the interests of freedom-loving peoples in the world. And not that we take it on as a world's policeman, I'm not talking about that, but I am talking about having a conscious foreign policy which people from the outside can look at and say, I know where the boundaries are. I defy anybody to tell me where the boundaries are right now. And that's a dangerous situation for the world. So I guess I think we have to start looking at the possibility that we may have to say there are some boundaries here. And I'm sure there are things I am not aware of that are going on with the government between the United States and China, but I fear not as much as needs to be going on.
Tom, please. Thank you. I can see this law provides the president with a broad range of tools that if he chooses, he can use very effectively against North Korea. And in that sense, he has strong political support from Congress to carry on this, moving into the direction of this policy. Now, I think to see the effective implementation or effect of this legislation will have to involve China again, because North Korea's trade, which amounts to about $1 billion a year, 90% of that is with China. So, and this law also provides the president to seize assets of North Korea. They don't have very many assets abroad, almost none in the United States, for example, other than what was frozen a long time ago, very minimal in amount. Now, and there will be some other countries that do some business with North Korea, very small, less than 10% of North Korea's trade. That said, it will have to, again, engage North Korea, China, or punish Chinese entities, businesses, individuals who are doing business with North Korea, trading with North Korea. And I don't see how the United States can do it, certainly not under this administration, even next administration. Donald Trump, he says he's going to negotiate with the Chinese, okay, with China, he's going to do that. but I don't know what kind of he's going to do that, okay? And Ted Cruz said somehow congressional Republicans somehow believe if we press the Chinese strong enough, then they will really exercise their influence on North Korea to behave better. Or they will cut off their entire trade or lifeline, whatever, to North Koreans. But the way things are going, I don't see the United States will directly confront or sanction Chinese businesses. So what's your opinion on that?
It would clearly not be the first reaction of the current administration, and I suspect not the first reaction of an upcoming administration to that. Having said that, they have the tools now to engage the Chinese in a much broader range than they had before this. And sometimes tools are useful in discussion, in negotiations, that just because they exist. But once again, it takes a clear desire to know where you want to go, what you want to achieve, in some cases the time frame in which you want to achieve that, as to know how to pull these levers and maneuver these levers. And I think this has been left open to the administration by this legislation. But to say, I think you can say that there are many more levers that they have now than they had before. They have the administration has the ability to use them in more varied ways than they might have had in the past. But it is still, they don't have to. They can do what they believe is right. I think in some ways, once again, as I said in an earlier answer, we sort of wish the Chinese would just do the things the way we would like them to do. And frankly, wishing isn't a very good policy. It doesn't often get you very far. You have to have some design. If you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. We have to start knowing where we're going again. And I don't think we have. We have given people some levers here, some options for how to do things. But we haven't said, we as a country, Republicans and Democrats alike, have not said, this is where we want to be in the next generations to come. This is how we want to have a world that is freer, trades more free trade, more free opportunity, more freedom of peoples, more freedom of movement, more freedom of information, all of those things. If we want that, we have to have some idea how to pursue that, rather than just be a wish. And at this point, I think we've been doing more in wishes than we have in reality, and because we have not set the reality.
Okay. Mike, come to the floor.
Thank you. Hello, Mike Bassett. Hope you don't mind that I brought a teleprompter. I just have one brief comment and one question of you, sir, or the panel. First, I thank you for being here today and applaud your concern for oppressed Korean people and concern for global threats, especially to the United States. It seems as if the more we pressure North Korea, the more it hurts average people and results in a greater proliferation of their nuclear programs. It is my opinion, and that of many experts, including colleagues I have from Reagan's administration, that normalizing relations with North Korea is the only way to liberate the country. North Korea has diplomatic relations with, I believe, 166 countries after all, and they seem desiring to proliferate a knowledge-based quasi-market economy which has been aided as a result of their relations with those countries. It is right to demand accountability of North Korea or any government that behaves in such a way, but given the fact that North Korea behaves as an anarchist state on the international level of analysis, how can we incorporate approaches that won't result in average North Korean people suffering collateral damage and without motivating North Korea's resolve to bolster their defenses at their people's expenses? Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Anyone? Tony?
Okay. Just a week ago, I published another column in the Korea Times, and I did mention some of the concerns that you raised. In that column, I said North Koreans are not likely to come to the terms with the outside world because of sanctions unless China is fully ready to implement. I mean, they're not ready even to go along with the United States and its allies at the United States, UN Security Council to adopt any strong, tough resolution yet. It remains to be seen, but my argument was they're not going to adopt any resolution that would, in China's policy over principle, that might or contribute to the destabilization of the Korean Peninsula. That's one of their three principles, meaning raising questions. Sanctions, along with deterrence, tend to raise tensions by its own nature. Now, and I also pointed out that these sanctions are more likely to hurt average the citizens, residents of North Korea, not the leadership or the elites that rule North Korea, who are very unlikely to come to succumb to pressure from the Western world. And so who suffers is North Koreans. That's what I'm concerned. Same thing with what the South Korean government did past the 2 weeks, closing up the Kaesong industrial complex, cutting off of water, and they putting 54,000 people out of work overnight, and cutting off water supply or electricity supply for the residential area in Kaesong, and also, again, purpose was to show some strong resolve of the South Korean government and its people to stand up to oppose North Korea's continuous provocation. That is well done in that purpose, but at the same time, there are collateral casualties. The casualties are none other than poor residents of North Korea. So you have a very valid point. So John Kerry even said, we're going to adopt a resolution that would not hurt North Koreans, not the North Korean people, but how you come up with any resolution that can really, does not affect the livelihood of North Korean people, whereas you can just give the message to the North Korean regime. It is a big problem. It is a dilemma, I think.
Thank you, Tom. Larry and Peter.
On diplomatic relations, your point. I have said in the past that there could be advantages to the United States to have an embassy or a diplomatic mission in Pyongyang. I've talked to and have heard talks from several of the Swedish, British, and German ambassadors who have served in Pyongyang, and they do find out interesting things about the North Korean regime that I don't think we quite grasp the way they do, even though they are greatly restricted in their operations in Pyongyang. Also, with this phenomena of Americans sometimes foolishly getting into trouble in North Korea and being arrested, and we have another one now from the University of Virginia, having a diplomatic mission in Pyongyang would frankly give us a little bit more leverage, a little bit more access in trying to help these people when they do get themselves in trouble and do get themselves arrested in North Korea. That all being said, however, we have seen today's news that Kim Jong-un rejected an offer, an unconditional offer from the Obama administration to resume nuclear negotiations. Given the climate right now, and given, I think, the real uncertainty and frankly, it seems to me, skepticism that even if we offered to open diplomatic missions in each other's capital, I think the North Koreans would probably say no. we're not interested at this time. I don't think the timing right now is right to do that. I think we're gonna have to wait for some diplomatic improvement in the situation before we can really start thinking along the lines of offering an embassy or liaison missions or anything like that, which of course we have talked to them about in the past. But I don't think the timing right now is right to do that.
Thank you, Peter.
I find the Chinese are clever, but they're also disingenuous. They say that we don't want to raise tensions on the peninsula, we don't want to destabilize anything, and yet they are the #1 partner of probably the worst regime in the world, along with our friends in Iran. The people of North Korea are in gulags, or in prisons, or they're privileged party members of the military, and have been suffering since the regime took over, and that had nothing to do with us. The regime could open itself up like day after tomorrow. They don't want to, and the story, I think it was Melanie Patrick did the story on the young man who fled one of the gulags there. It was just an extraordinary story of courage. So my idea of North Korea as a crime family masquerading as a country, not unlike Mr. Putin and a couple other countries like Castro, and therefore take away their money. When we sanctioned the Banco Delta, if I remember correctly, the North Koreans came to the table in a heartbeat. The problem is our Secretary of State, God love her, Ms. Rice, Condoleezza, said, okay, if they're gonna come back to the table,